Welcome to the sound of one man clapping. I am the one man you're listening to, James, and I'm coming to you direct from the Chamber of Secrets in my underground bunker, soothed by the embalming aroma of fresh paint. True story, the Fox has undertaken some recent upgrades for me. New lighting, and she loves filling a hole. You can't even see where the old lighting was mounted. She's a freaking wizard with a paint roller. Today, as always, we're going to look at some of the games I've played over the last week and thoughts on those. We're going to touch on what's coming in with Incoming! With 4 exclamation points, and we're going to start a new segment talking about the crowdfunding projects that I'm following. We should probably call it Crowdfunding Anonymous. Hi, my name is James, and I crowdfund games. Hi, James! OMC is a safe space. Sharing this allows me to feel like I'm not abnormally invested in the crowdfunding space, but also I totally am. I'm in the throes of my favorite things series. Last week we covered some of my favorite personalities from around the globe, and if you haven't listened to that yet, it should most definitely be on your list. This week we're going to cover one of my favorite designers, a game designer that is decidedly polarizing for all the right reasons, and of course we'll close out the episode by giving someone the clap. I would also like to celebrate. Last week I set the lofty goal of doubling our super fan base on Facebook from 4 to 8. We have absolutely smashed that goal. As of today, we are at 14 superfans, with the pod having been downloaded in 7 countries. Not terrible for a week's work. Keep it up, clappers. But you love being called clappers. Don't know where that came from. It's a thing now. But before we go too much further, I do need to issue an apology. I'd like to think we're starting this podcast journey on a foundation of integrity and ethics. I need to make an apology for a comment I made last week where I compared the new Teotihuacan big box insert to hot trash. Hal, have you got a definition for hot trash for me?
Hot trash is a slang term typically used to describe something that's considered really bad, messy, or poorly executed. It emphasizes that something is not only bad, but also actively unpleasant or disappointing.
I think that sums it up. I've spent some time over the last week watching some more videos on this and getting a little deeper into the nitty-gritty of this one, and I feel that I need to clear the air, and I do owe a massive apology. With that said, I would like to formally apologize to Hot Trash. That was an unfair comparison. Thank you, fair listeners, for your patience and understanding with my misstep. Now on to the games from this week. This week I played Andromeda's Edge, which is completely unrelated to the Andromeda strain, which was one of the most terrifying sci-fi books of my childhood. But Andromeda's Edge is the spiritual successor to Dwellings of Eldervale, which in reality was quite a polarizing game. People seem to love it or really dislike it. I was kind of in the middle. I didn't love Dwellings of Eldervale, but I really liked it. I played it quite a few times, both solo and multiplayer. I play with myself a lot, you may recall. I've been playing Andromeda's Edge solo only for now while I wait for some friends to turn up. Could be a while after my threat last week to get new ones if they didn't play ARCs with me. Let that be a lesson to you. Tantrums just don't work. Maybe if I stop catering game nights. That seems to work on the Fox. Anyway, Andromeda's Edge. Mechanics are very similar to Dwellings of Eldervale. You've got your workers, they go out, and you can recall them at any time. As they get recalled, they get to move through your engine, activating different points of it, which is really clever. One of the things I really liked about Andromeda's Edge. It's a mechanic that Luke Laurie used all the way back in Cryo some years ago. And the mechanics are great. The board space is great. The board state changes regularly, even in solo. It's a fantastic solo. It's clear the team that worked on Andromeda's Edge worked very hard to right what I won't call the wrongs, but perhaps the mild inadequacies of Dwellings of Eldervale. Dwellings of Eldervale was a fine game. It was fun. The theme was a little weird. You know, you were building these dwellings out in the wilderness where huge dragons and minotaurs and cyclopses are stomping around, ravaging, and building a little hut on one of your worker turned into greater strength in the area, which makes sense, I guess, but why would you be freaking living there? Andromeda's Edge kind of fixes this with the theme in that your transports go out, they land on a planet, you get great things when they land on a planet, and those transports then can be converted into a colony of sort, and different colonies have different powers and different abilities. Different colonies will, and colony types will contribute towards your end game. You've got these fantastic cards you can play during battles, which mitigate the dice, which was one of my, I guess, not hesitations, but one of the reasons I didn't play Dwellings of Eldervale again and again and again. I kind of tapped out at 6 or 7 games. There wasn't a lot of dice mitigation. And you've got these superb tactics cards, which you kind of had in Dwellings, but not really to this level, which mitigate the dice really heavily in Andromeda's Edge, giving you a lot of power to go into combat with a plan B and sometimes even a plan C up your sleeve. Dwellings of Eldervale, what I really liked was the board was gorgeous, the pieces were gorgeous, the production was outstanding. You had a number of different factions. One of the things I didn't like, and this is just me being a dick about it, is that if you picked a faction, you were locked into a color. It's the same kind of thing when you're playing Gaia Project, and it's not that I'm on the spectrum, but if I'm playing a color that's almost always Super Trooper or Dustin, or it's almost always the Fox, or whatever the case is, I struggle to internalize the board state. And that's one of my favorite things that's been changed with Andromeda's Edge, is that colors are not associated to specific factions anymore. It may seem like a small thing, but I think from a game experience, it's actually not. The fact that I get to be purple every game, or there's a plan B, I can be yellow, which are the two that I play with, means that when I'm looking at a board, there's no internal sort of translation moments of, oh wait, that's not me. Oh wait, that's this person. And I love that. Among the bits of mechanics that were adjusted and modified to I guess, bring the mechanics from Dwellings of Eldervale into what is Andromeda's Edge. It's such a small thing, that color choice, when you've got 18 factions to choose from, that makes a meaningful difference to my gameplay, particularly if I'm playing solo, because I play a lot of solo games. And if I've got to play solo, I'm be gray, for example, which I guess you don't have to do if you're playing solo. So they fixed the dice, which is great. You've got these incursions that happen with all these different kinds of raiders. There are a number of beautiful models, a number of beautiful sculpts for these minis for the raiders, and each of them has multiple uses. And they come to the board and they bring a dynamism to the board state, which I love. The AI in Dwellings, which was fine, it was fine. The AI that we have now in Andromeda's Edge is superb. You've got 3 different cards that you're facing. A roll of a die will tell you which of those cards is going to be the AI's next move. I love that, because the way the dice are weighted, it's 1 to 3 will choose a certain item, 4 and 5 will choose another, and 6 will choose the one you really don't want. But what it does is it allows you to look over at the bot's board and make some meaningful decisions. Because you can play the weight of statistics and go, well, the most likely thing is they're going to do X. But they might do Y. And if they do Z, I'm effed. I'm truly effed. I can't handle Z right now. So how can I mitigate Z during my turn? And it's much the same if you're looking around the table at the people you're playing with. I can look across the table and go, well, 000 is likely to do this. So what can I do? Or Super Trooper's in a position to fist me in this quadrant. How can I make a decision that will help that? I might not be able to prevent it, but how can I sort of survive that? How can I lube it, so to speak? I really like that. One of the things I love, you've got these lovely little tech cards that you build your engine with in Andromeda's Edge. And you can get a lot of them. You could get cards in Dwellings of Eldervale, but at the end of the game, if you had 3 or 4, you were doing really well. In Andromeda's Edge, you can have 15 of these, and they give a uniqueness to your engine that's outstanding. I love that. That's not what I want to say, though. Almost every one of these cards has some little nod or Easter egg to something else. And you might not know what it is. It might be a Star Trek reference. It might be a Star Wars reference. It might be a reference to Dwellings of Eldervale. It might be a reference to something completely different. But looking at these, and it's one of my favorite things, particularly if I'm playing solo and I've got the time, is I'll pull these and I'll put them on my engine and go, what is that? What is that? And it's this great little mini game. And hats off to the team, because I love that. Designed by Luca Maximus Lori, published by Cardboard Alchemy, with art by Sergei Chavez. The art is glorious. I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to getting more plays to the table. Absolutely. Thursday night, Super Trooper and I have been working our way through one of the Arkham Horror campaigns. Arkham Horror is one of Super Trooper's favorite games. I'm pretty sure he has the whole lot, or near enough. And we're currently playing the Path to Carcosa campaign. I'm not sure what it is that's waiting for us in Carcosa, but I am 100% sure it's not good. I've already had to build a new character halfway through the campaign. And if you're familiar with the game, I have 2 mental trauma going into next week's session. Not amazing. This would have never happened with Zoe. Zoe was my first character. Zoe was a chef who's stabby as. Go figure. I relate to that. And that's ongoing. So hopefully we'll get through that in the next 3 or 4 weeks and then move on to something else on Thursday nights. Last week on Incoming, I mentioned Wondrous Creatures was on the way in, and it did indeed arrive. I managed to get the fox to the table. It was the cute factor that brought her in. Wondrous Creatures is freaking adorable. It's right at the top end of game weight for her, but the cute kept her going. That and whatever's driving her into my waiting arms in the bunker, it's still going. So to whatever's going on in the world at large that's forcing her to come here guilt-ridden 3 times a week and seek my attention over board games, thank you. I'm certainly not complaining. Wondrous Creatures it's kind of Everdell-esque. It doesn't have that deep struggle for resources. It does indeed have swags of wonderful creatures. Really cute little meeples, from unicorns to dragonfly horses to sea serpents to owlbears. And you've got this really beautiful, unique worker placement system in that each worker covers 2 different hexes. So you put your worker out and you'll be able to claim actions based on every habitat that worker touches all the way around those 2 hexes. So depending on where you are on the board, that might be 2 spaces, it might be 4 spaces. The board state actually changes and grows as the game goes on. So spaces that weren't actionable spaces at the start of the game may very well be towards the end. It's a really great worker placement mechanic. So you've got to put 3 workers out before you can recall. However, your action isn't necessarily always involving a worker. So the recall action is what advances the timer for the game. And by the end of your first sort of set of turns, each player is recalling at a different time, because recall is your entire turn. Putting something out is your entire turn. Playing cards from your hand is your entire turn. And all these cards are other creatures which you are playing into your tableau. And each of them has unique effects. They might be instants, they might be endgame, they might be powers that trigger during your recall. The components are gorgeous. You've got 7 different species of little eggs. You've got reptile eggs and insect eggs, mammal eggs. Yes, of course, mammal eggs, right? Mammals have eggs. We just can't normally see them. And as you collect eggs, they go onto your board, and they're actually a currency. We've got icons all through Wondrous Creatures, much like Ark Nova or Terraforming Mars. And these icons weigh in towards your achievements. And achievements are absolutely the key to winning this game. So if you haven't got enough icons, you can hatch one of your eggs to get an icon that's the same as that creature. It's a great mechanic because you can only hatch an egg once. So you hatch that egg, it counts as an icon towards an achievement, and then it's gone. There are some very small ways in the game to get those eggs refreshed, but they're rare and hard to come by. So eggs really are a fundamental part. You know, we're pulling those eggs out of the wilderness, we're hatching those for the creatures, and we're using those creatures as a presence to achieve the rewards. The production's outstanding. And one of the things that's the cutest of all is you've got a captain who's one of your workers, and the captain is unique. Everyone's got an asymmetrical captain. The captain clicks onto one of your creatures like he's riding it with magnets. And so you've got a captain that goes out. Each one of them does something different. The board is stunning. The game is a blast. It's designed by what looks like first-time designer named Yelm CW and published by Bad Comic Games. And I'll be looking forward to whatever their next project is, which in fact I think I got an email about today. It's a project about sea life from memory. I don't think it's going to be for me, but it looks gorgeous. One to watch. Got in a game of Wayfarers of the South Tigris again with Super Trooper. We played this once before and it's good. I think I prefer Scholars of the South Tigris over Wayfarers. Maybe because we played Scholars a few more times. Inventors is also incoming! 4 exclamation points. And apparently there's a mini campaign mode or expansion that links them all together, so that's going to be a thing at some point. Anyway, last time we played Wayfarers was something like 6 months ago, and so we were learning it again from scratch, which is fine. That's what you do when you play games as often as we do, and between us we've got 300 or something games to play. This time I was reading the rulebook instead of Super Trooper, so it took way longer than it should. But we got there in the end. It has a lot of the same elements as Scholars. If you've played either of these, you've got colored workers that have varying abilities. Dice color doesn't matter in Wayfarers like it does in Scholars, but rather each number has asymmetrical abilities on the board. By that I mean if you roll a 1, it will have access to a number of worker placement spots that are different to if you roll a 2. You have the ability to upgrade each die face in your caravan by investing in overlay tiles, and the puzzle of trying to ensure that you have a broad spectrum as possible in available options through manipulation of your die is a great puzzle. Of course, it overlays with the 14 other great puzzles that you're trying to solve simultaneously, so you really have to focus. Sobriety is the key here. And the game ended with a tie, which if you listened to last week's episode, and I'm sure you all have because you're good little clappers, you know that a tie is not a win. Even though I won on the tie break, it's still not a win. A win is a win. A tie is a tie. It was a great night, though, and balm to soothe my wounds after having my ass handed to me in Arkham. Wayfarers by Shem Phillips and Sam McDonald, with art by Mihailo Dmitrievsky, as are all the something of the Compass Direction something games. For me, I'm very much looking forward to Adventures of the South Tigris later this year, as well as the extra content that it will have that brings it all together. Maybe a big box with a better insert, because the inserts for these games are gnarly. And those were the games that were. On now to... As usual, there's a constant stream of incoming games, either via pre-orders or crowdfunding, and last week the shipping notification that I thought was Ironwood was actually the new expansion content for Apiary. That's right, Space Bees! Apiary is a midweight worker placement game from Stonemaier Games, with a really interesting mechanic of increasing worker strength as they age, and worker retirement, aka death, when they get to a certain age. The bees age, they get more and more powerful, and then they drop dead. As they die, you can allocate these bees to an endgame scoring capability or an extra bonus. It's great. We'll cover Apiary in an upcoming episode, I'm sure, once I've given the expansion content a good run through. I do want to touch on Stonemeier's expansions, though, because this is one of the things I really love about Stonemaier, is their approach to expansions. Stonemaier Games, for as long as I've been buying them, which isn't a long time, I think I bought my first one 3.5 years ago, and that was Scythe, they typically come with some measure of sustainability built into them. Stonemaier Games has really been passionate about biodegradable bags versus PVC plastic, for example, and wherever they can. Their expansions, certainly the last couple that I've bought, we've got the expansion that was for Expeditions, which while it came in a box, it was a very simple box. There was no insert or anything, because the original box for Expeditions had room for the expansion, which we were all delighted to see when we opened it the first time. But the last time I bought an expansion for Tapestry and this expansion for Apiary, they come in cardboard envelopes. Really well padded, really well shaped so that things inside don't get damaged. But they come to you with the expectation that you are going to throw the packaging away. It's a plain cardboard package with a label on it. And you open it up and you add the content to your regular game box and you recycle this. And I love that. It's one of the things I love about Stonemaier Games is that they try wherever they can to incorporate this notion of modern game design and modern game production into the world we're currently living in. I have 3 daughters. I'm hopeful there's going to be a planet for them in 50 years, and all these little things will add up. There's a great game that I'm looking forward to coming at the end of this year called Earthborn Rangers. And Earthborn Rangers is not glossy. It's not foiled. There's no UV spot. The cards are almost a little bit dull in the way they present. But everything in Earthborn Rangers has been built with sustainability to the point where you could throw it in your compost heap when you're done with it. None of the cards are plasticated or laminated. None of the board pieces are plasticated or laminated. The dyes and inks are all vegetable based. It's my understanding. If I've got this wrong, there'll be another apology next week. But that's my understanding. And it looks to be a fantastic game. So that's something I'm really looking forward to as well. So arriving imminently is Ironwood. I touched on this briefly last week. It looks like it will be hitting my doorstep today or tomorrow. So that's exciting. And thank you again, Mark Dainty, for putting me onto that, because it looks like a blast. And I've also got River of Gold on the way in, which is brand new, hot off the press. I love the way it looks. I think it's a very pretty game, and the gameplay looks excellent. It looks like it could have been a game by Devere. It's got that sort of small box, great presence. It's not by Devere. Watch this space for some completely one-sided commentary on both of those. As I've said before, this is not a review podcast, in my opinion only. From this week, we're also going to be discussing my love for crowdfunding games and my own constant battles with FOMO. FOMO, or the fear of missing out, is really just an anagram of MOFO, as in leave my wallet alone, MOFO. And I've decided if I'm suffering, then you all get to suffer with me. This will not be an exhaustive list of all the crowdfunding campaigns that are ongoing. That would be a show and a half all on its own. This will only be the ones that I'm suffering through. If you are interested in an exhaustive list and a show all about crowdfunding, you can Patreon So Very Wrong About Games. They have a great show every fortnight called Pledge of Indifference, and they unpick everything that's on crowdfunding. Listen to that. They will save you money. It's awesome. So moving on with our first installment of FOMOMOFO. That would be me. This week was a decent one for crowdfunding launches, and here are the ones that I've been following. Up first is a game called Gems of Iridecia. This looks like a first endeavor from designer Roberto Panetta, and his socials have been going crazy for the last 10 to 12 weeks. I've been following this game on Facebook and Instagram. It is very pretty. It's a super cute game about mining gems, and the components look amazing. Everything in the game is foiled. Everything in the game sparkles. Everything's glittery and glossy. The actions look simple and to the point. What I've been following with the view to maybe playing with the peanut, the cute factor is literally off the charts. I have some reservations with this being the first game for a designer, and he's obviously self-publishing through Kickstarter. And while it's not through the roof with ambition, it's high. You look at the production quality on his pre-production copies that are being presented, and they are really swanky looking. The price seems right, and I may back it just because this is exactly what crowdfunding is meant to be. You know, crowdfunding started so you could support small designers and developers to help bring their dreams to life. And too many crowdfunding projects, and guilty as charged, hand up, hand on heart, guilty as charged, they're from someone like Simon or Awakened Realms, who have $100 bazillion and 55 people working for them. And they're bringing these games to you, and they use crowdfunding as a way to fund their initiatives. You know, I think the last Awakened Realms one was $9.7 million. I think Roberto's looking at, $180,000, whatever the case is. So I may back this just because it's my chance in my backing and in my crowdfunding habit to actually use it for what it was really intended to be. I'm not entirely convinced about the gameplay, but in the end, it's about time with the peanut, not Voidfall with gems and sparkles. Voidfall would be great with gems and sparkles. I'm on the fence right now. It's not a little bit expensive at $69 for the deluxe edition. That in and of itself is a little bit of a red flag when I see something with high production, a first production at such a low price. I wouldn't be concerned with this differential out of someone like Mindclash, for example, but for a Virgin design, it does raise a little bit of an alarm. Shipping's probably half of that again, but it funded in one day and it's going strong. So I'll be watching this one closely for the peanut. It's not me that wants the sparkly foil gems. It's for the peanut. Next this week was Pantheon. Again, I've been watching this one on the socials for a few weeks and my interest had been highly piqued for sure. Pantheon's another cherry pop, this time for designer Trevor Kurth. And Pantheon claims to be a strange little mix of engine building and area control, and I absolutely love anything Greek mythology, so I have been watching this one for weeks and weeks again. It's got great art. I'm not going to lie. The art, the production looks great. The gameplay looks fine. I'm just not sure it fits in my collection or my needs. Again, it's not expensive. $69 for the deluxe version, though this game's definition of deluxe is a lot less glamorous than that of Gems Viridesia. Watching the rules explanation, it seems to be almost more of an abstract spatial puzzle tucked inside a veneer of area control, so ultimately I think this will be a pass for me. But I did spend quite a bit of time looking through everything they have. Greek gods are so hot. And lastly, for FOMOMOFO this week, was something that came right out of left field for me. Was not on my radar. Never heard of it. And I love the way it looks and appears to play. This is March of the Ants. Honestly, what the actual Farquad? Never heard of it. It's a reprint. It's a refresh of a game by Tim Eisner. And I love Tim Eisner for one reason and one reason only, and that is Wonderland's War. Tim designed Wonderland's War in tandem with a few other legends published by Druid City Games, and I freaking love Wonderland's War. The Manny Trim play art pops, the tension of the bag draw. I absolutely love the all-in deluxe version. I have everything you could possibly get for it. Those chips are honestly the best in the industry, hands down. So March of the Ants. It's a 4X game with ants. Yes, it sounds ridiculous. Yes, it looks outstanding. The art's all been refreshed. As I said, I'd never heard of this before, but I looked at both versions. The new art is awesome. The gameplay looks great. If you can believe it, I don't actually have a 4X in my collection. And granted, ants wouldn't be my first pick for theming, but I guess I don't really need another space theme game. I totally need another space theme game for the record. And I do own Space Bees, so maybe there's a dedicated shelf on the Kallax for insect space niche games. I don't know. We'll see. So you're building your ant colony. You're customizing your ant's capabilities with these great overlay cards for the head, thorax, and abdomen. Every time you upgrade a section, the power that section contributes to your ant colony grows. You're flipping exploration hexes, filling with resources. You're battling other ants in the tunnels. It's really a 4X game with ants. I don't know, man. It looks great. And we seem to have another overarching theme today, and that it's only $65 for the deluxe edition. And the deluxe edition is fabulous. Dual layer boards, deluxe components, little wooden ants. There's a Predators and Prey expansion with wooden meeples for that. I had no freaking idea this game even existed. I looked it up on BGG. The original's about 10 years old, has a solid following. Cole Worley talks it up. Cole Worley talks up this game. Says it's one of the most underrated, one of the best 4X games on the market with ants. So Tim Eisner designed a number of games, mostly for Druid City, and has a solid pedigree. Honestly, I'm on the fence with this one too, but I'm more on the probably side of the fence rather than the not likely. It funded very quickly on day one. It's going strong. And thus concludes our FOMOMOFO portion of the day. And without any more faffing about, on to my favorite things for this week. This week we're talking about one of my favorite designers. His games cause some to end the day rocking back and forth in the corner, muttering, "What the And yet, for so many, his games have birthed a zealous and passionate following, gamers that thrive on mental self-flagellation, almost a form of cerebral S&M. I must admit, I've been in both of these camps, though I will say the more of his games you play, the more they make sense. I am talking, of course, about Vital Lacerda. I played my first Lacerda about 3 years ago, give or take, maybe a little longer, and your first Lacerda is definitely memorable. There's no fumbling with brawl straps here. You have to plan it out meticulously. And so I was heading over to Super Trooper's place. We were having a game day with Dustin, and I think I'd actually requested on Mars for the day. I didn't understand the hesitation at the request at the time, and on arrival, Super Trooper had set the table up, all ready to go. Initial impressions were fabulous. If you haven't played a Lacerda, it's not for everybody, but I really think everyone should experience it at least once. So I walk in, and here the board's laid out, and Lacerda's boards are huge. Huge and gorgeous. Coincidentally, that was my bio line when I was online dating and met the Fox, but that's another story for not this podcast. So yes, there I was, huge and gorgeous, both me and the board. And I do think this is my first exposure to Ian O'Toole as well, whose art I absolutely adore. This sprawling board with tokens, tiles, cards, massive double-layer boards, and purple freaking player pieces. Don't ever change, Lacerda. Purple pieces. So I grabbed a coffee, sat at the table. Dustin and Super Trooper were doing deep breathing exercises like they were about to have to swim through a tunnel for 4 minutes. They'd played before, clearly. I had no idea what I was in for, and Super Trooper started the teach. Time for a flashback. Usually for big games, I watch a video beforehand, and I remember having watched the video that morning while I got the peanut ready for school, thinking, while it's playing, it's, yep, okay, wait, what? Wait, what the fuck? What? Yeah, what? And I'm pretty sure I just ended up playing in the background while packing lunch, thinking something like, it's all good, I'll work it out. Super Trooper's a teacher. Back to the present, well, the other past. And Super Trooper's still doing the teach. I need another coffee. Yes, it was a 2-coffee teach. That's a thing. So the teach was done. It was time to take a turn. Something I've learned since then many times over. The hardest turn in any Lacerda game is the first turn. You have so many freaking choices usually. I mean, Lisboa is basically play a card, draw a card. Is what happens between those two events that gives you brain bake. So On Mars was my first. It was probably 4 hours or so from memory. And the end game scoring was a surprise fisting once I realized there's a 3-way relationship, pretty much a scoring menage a trois between your scientists, your modules, your board state. Surprise, motherfucker! But oh, it was so good. I think I borrowed it that day to play solo. I even got my eldest Lou to play a game with me. Lou cleaned my clock. She is a wizard at these sorts of deep thinky games. She excels at Lacerdas. She doesn't play games very often because she's a fully fledged adult now and, too cool for that stuff. But anyway, I played with Lou. It was awesome. And so it is with every new Lacerda. It's the deep breathing, the 2-coffee teach before taking the plunge, the cerebral carnage as you try and wend your way through the intricacies of each game, with the eventual triumph of having survived the first run. And I freaking love it. And purple pieces. So I want to unpick a little more of exactly what I love about his games, with 3 examples of my favorites. My favorite Lacerda games. I'll kick off with the first Lacerda that I ever bought, and that was Lisboa. Ian O'Toole does almost all of Lacerda's games so far as I can tell. And while you can pick most of them as Ian's art right away, I think Lisboa has the most unique art style of the collection. It absolutely suits the game perfectly. Lisboa follows the time in Lisbon following the Great Earthquake in the mid-1700s, a time when the city was ravaged by damage, and it's up to us to rebuild it both physically and financially. There's 3 kinds of damage on the board: earthquake, flood, and fire, and you have to work specifically to repair this damage, reusing the rubble to rebuild your own warehouse and develop your own holdings, being rewarded when you do so. You build out different key businesses, support the reconstruction and reopening of public buildings, all of which brings people back to the marketplace, which builds the economy. You have to work hand in hand with the clergy and the nobles to deftly maneuver your own influence and senators, whilst managing shipping and export lines. You can use your own ships, and you can use other people's ships, and that has a plus and minus for everybody. Lisboa remains in my top 10 games of all time, and it's a triumph. And one of the things I love most about Lisboa, it's not even the game play itself, but is that Lacerda worked so very deftly to weave the behaviors of the nobles and clergy into the game mechanics. And these behaviors and mechanics are all unpicked in the manual, if you want to learn more. And as an example, following the earthquake, the king hid himself away, eschewing his royal duties, palming everything off to the marquis, really only coming out of hiding to open public buildings, only to disappear again. And this is one of the very few things the king's actually good for in the game. That and providing favor tokens that you can use for the nobles. and integrating with the clergy. And it's a brilliant integration. Lacerda, you're never going to listen to this, but thank you, man. That is a game that I love. My second pick for my favorite things by Vital Lacerda is Weather Machine. And truly, I think this has the greatest art of all the Lacerdas. It has a machine punk vibe that I absolutely love. Hats off Ian O'Toole again. You know if you're listening in, which you probably never will, but if you are, I'm a fangirl. I had the pleasure of meeting Ian at PlayCon. He's a gentleman with his time. He's engaging, and he's a part of this industry in a way that is fundamentally critical to enjoyment. So anyway, in Weather Machine, you're one part mad scientist, one part philanthropist. You're trying to help repair a machine that's been built to change the weather, and it's all gone to shit. You have to build up your own workshop, send out your robots to assist, and in some ways actually work together. It's not cooperative. However, some of these things can't be achieved on your own. For example, you're researching papers and trying to get them published. You can linchpin on other players' work that they've published to make it happen, all the time racing this ever-collapsing machine. My favorite aspect of Weather Machine is that you're working to repair the machine, but each time you do, it ramps up, keeping pace with your own growth, becoming exceedingly difficult to deal with. If you don't work together just a little while still trying to crush your opponent, it all goes very badly. And the solo mode on Weather Machine, thank you, David Tercey, again, another legend of industry, is absolutely awesome in that it represents a subfaction of saboteurs trying to undo, hinder, and break your work. It's the Luddites in the background working against you at every step, and the theme is superb. I absolutely love Weather Machine. And my last pick is actually his most recent iteration, and that's Inventions, Evolution of Ideas. Inventions feels very different to a lot of the other Lacerdas, and it feels both simpler than anything else by Lacerda, though I by no means played everything, and at the same time heavier. BGG has it rated heavier than On Mars by a mosquito's gooch, which I don't necessarily agree with, but there it is. How big is a mosquito's gooch?
There's no scientific measurement for something like a mosquito's gooch.
Well, that was no help whatsoever. I was really hopeful that mosquito's gooch was in Hal's vocabulary. Onward. So back to Inventions. I played a few months back with Super Trooper, and he actually rated it Lacerda's heaviest yet, which BGG happens to agree with, though I will flag he was knee-deep in a cycle of COVID, so I'm not sure his opinion is valid. By his own admission, he has very little recollection of playing, and it could be the mix of Codrels and Pepsi Max, perhaps with lack of sleep, or it could just be excuses. He doesn't normally make excuses when he loses, come to think of it, so it's probably legit. Anyway, Inventions has you carrying a civilization forward through the ages, traveling across the globe with ideas, and again carries this vague undercurrent of having to work ever so slightly together. Each invention has to be proposed, then invented, and it may be innovated upon, and then it can be shared with the world. And your contribution to each step culminates in a variety of benefits once it's shared. You're building modules into your player board, developing your civilization, managing 4 different types of workers, and in the end it's over quicker than you want it to be, but in the best possible way. Before you know it, you have 2 turns left, and you've got all the slave hamsters running their wheels in your head, working out how to best end your game. When the day comes that we're playing with Dustin, we're going to have to set up another game on another table just to get us through the last 2 rounds. Love you, dude. And Inventions is awesome. I will confess my undying love for Lacerda's games is not without limit. I absolutely bounced off Kanban EV for reasons I can't put my finger on, despite 4 or 5 plays. I love On Mars, and I have to confess that Vinos is on my shelf of shame. We have Escape Plan and Gallerist in our gaming circle, and I've yet to play those. I've also not dipped my toes into his co-design lighter projects, though I have ordered a copy of Bot Factory. Hopefully that his Kanban Light might get to the table with the Fox, maybe the Peanut. And he has a couple of other lighter co-design projects as well to look out for. Mercado de Lisboa is Lisboa Light, and House of Fado is a lighter re-implementation of the Gallerist. His next project's coming to Kickstarter in about a week and a half. It's called Speakeasy. It is an insta-back for me. I absolutely love Prohibition-era culture, and it looks amazing. Lastly, it wouldn't be an episode of OMC without giving someone the clap, and this week it's going to be the UK game reviewer / influencer / podcaster / YouTuber that's literally ruining it for everyone else, doing allegedly dodgy things. I say allegedly to cover my ass here. He's been holding small publishers to ransom for their own games and basically just being a douche. There's plenty going around about the incident on BGG if you know where to look. I'm not going to go into the details, but here's a slow, wet clap. Thanks, buddy, for ruining it for all the good ones. Oh my god, I am so sorry. That was absolutely the wrong bite. I most definitely did not mean to do that. I must have mislabeled it in my directory. How embarrassing. Well, with that gross misstep, we'll close out this episode of One Man Clapping. I've been your earworm for the last 40 minutes. As usual, you can reach out to us on all socials. Find us on Facebook by searching One Man Clapping. You can email One Man Clapping, that's WON Man Clapping, as in I've won all the games, onemanclapping@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at the number One Man Clapping. You can join me at the One Man Clapping Guild on BGG. Subscribe to Guild 4426. More activity to launch there in the coming fortnight. As always, thanks for listening. If you're like me, after a session of talking dirty about board games, I need to rinse out my mouth. I'll be using the tears of my enemies, which I keep in a bottle hand-painted by Ian O'Toole himself. Until next time, get your game on, even if you got to play with yourself. It's not a crime if you don't get caught. Peace out, mofos.